Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive all about the European brown bear.
Oh, cool.
We're diving deep into this pretty awesome essay I found all about them.
Nice.
And right away, I got to say I'm hooked,
Yeah.
especially that opening line about how something so powerful can also be so vulnerable.
It's true though, isn't it? I mean, the European brown bear is like a symbol of, you know, wild places and strength and just being able to, handle anything.
Right.
But then at the same time, the essay makes it really clear that like their future is completely tied to what we do.
Totally, and we'll definitely get into all that.
Yeah,
But first, I think we've got to paint a picture of what makes these creatures so awesome.
for sure.
So this essay mentions that, the males,
Yeah.
the adult males,
Yeah.
can weigh between 200 and 350 kilograms.
Whoa.
That's heavier than a grand piano.
Seriously.
I know. Can you imagine actually running into one of those in the wild?
I think that would be like a serious reality check
I know.
to like how powerful nature really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just their size either.
Right.
Those claws and those powerful forelimbs, they're not just for looks,
Right.
The essay talks about how they use those claws for everything, from like digging up roots to hunting,
Oh, wow.
even breaking open beehives to get honey.
Oh, my gosh. So they've got a sweet tooth.
They do.
I love that image.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So, they're big, they're strong,
Uh-huh.
but the essay also talks about how intelligent they are.
Oh, yeah.
It's they're way more than just brute strength.
Way more. I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the problem-solving skills researchers have seen,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to like finding food.
Yeah.
They've been observed using tools.
Where?
Yeah, like sticks
Oh, my
to
God.
get insects out of logs or rocks.
That's amazing.
And their memories are incredible. Like they can remember where to find food
Wow.
years later.
That's crazy. So, they're big, they're strong, and they're smart.
The trifecta.
I know. And speaking of food, the essay describes them as omnivores.
Mm-hmm.
So that means their diet is pretty diverse, right?
Super diverse. Like it changes with the seasons.
Oh, wow.
In the spring and summer, it's all about fresh plants, berries, insects, fish.
Yep.
They're just packing on the calories, getting ready.
Yeah.
The essay specifically mentions bilberries and lingonberries
Cool.
as like essential bear snacks.
As I said.
The bulk up before hibernation.
Right.
Then as fall comes around, it's all about the high-calorie stuff.
Okay.
Nuts, acorns,
Makes sense.
anything to get them through the winter.
So it's their own natural version of carb loading before a marathon or something.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of winter, let's talk about hibernation.
Okay.
It's just fascinating to me how they can sleep for months.
It really is. It's not just sleeping, though.
Yeah.
It's like their whole body goes through this massive transformation to conserve energy.
Yeah.
Their heart rate plummets. Their metabolism slows way down. Their body temperature even drops a little bit. But here's the really cool part.
Yeah.
They do all that while still avoiding serious muscle and bone loss,
Oh, wow.
which humans, if we just lay around for months, we have all sorts of problems.
Right.
The essay mentions how they actually recycle urea, which is a waste product to keep their nitrogen levels balanced and protect their muscles.
That's incredible.
It's mind-blowing.
So they're not just sleeping. They're running a whole internal lab experiment
Pretty much.
to keep things going.
Yeah.
That is so wild. But what happens when they wake up in the spring?
Oh, yeah.
Do they just pick up where they left off socially?
Well, the essay makes it clear that European brown bears are mostly loners,
Okay.
except during mating season and when moms are raising cubs.
Right.
But even though they're mostly solo, they still got to communicate somehow.
Yeah.
And they do that through scent marking.
Scent marking.
Yeah, they've got these scent glands on their paws and backs,
Wow.
and they rub those on trees, rocks, anything really.
So it's their own version of social media?
Kind of.
Letting other bears know, hey, I was here.
Exactly.
Up.
It's all about marking their territory, letting others know their relationship status,
Right.
even warning off rivals.
Smart.
It's all about avoiding those face-to-face conflicts,
Yeah.
which can get pretty intense with animals that size.
Right.
So yeah, it's this whole silent language in the forest.
That's amazing. And speaking of territory, the essay also mentions that their territories can be huge.
Oh, yeah.
How big are we talking?
It really depends on things like how much food is available
Okay.
and the quality of the habitat, but easily hundreds of square kilometers.
Wow.
They need that space to find enough food, especially when the seasons change.
Makes sense.
And of course, to find mates and establish their own territory.
Right. So it's incredible to think about these animals just roaming these vast landscapes,
Yeah.
pretty much hidden from us. But I got to ask, what's their relationship with humans like?
That's where things get a little more complicated. And it's definitely something we need to dive into deeper.
Okay.
The essay makes it pretty clear that historically it's been a complex relationship.
Okay.
Lots of ups and downs.
Yeah.
Lots of conflict, too.
I bet. You mentioned a complex relationship with humans?
Yeah, it's a...
I can only imagine, like, as human populations grew and, like, spread out,
Right.
it put a lot of pressure on their habitat.
Huge pressure. I mean, think about it. Deforestation, agricultural expansion, all that stuff.
Right.
It leads to habitat loss and fragmentation, which the essay really dives into.
Yeah?
And that fragmentation, it's like it isolates bear populations.
Right.
Makes it harder for them to find mates to maintain genetic diversity.
Right.
Almost like
Yeah.
these islands of habitat surrounded by this sea of human development.
But like that isolation,
Yeah.
that can have some pretty serious consequences long term.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, smaller, isolated populations are way more vulnerable
Yeah.
to things like disease outbreaks or even like sudden environmental changes.
Mm-hmm.
And that reduced genetic diversity.
Yeah.
It just makes them less adaptable overall.
It's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's not good.
It's heartbreaking to think about these creatures being squeezed into smaller and smaller spaces.
It is.
The essay also mentions illegal hunting and poaching.
Yeah.
Is that still a big problem?
It's definitely decreased in recent years,
Okay.
thanks to stricter regulations and better enforcement.
Good.
But poaching is still a problem in some areas.
Really?
Yeah, the essay points out that some cultures still value bear parts
Oh, yeah.
for traditional medicine or even as like status symbols,
Oh,
which drives the illegal trade.
that's awful.
Yeah.
And I guess sometimes it's just
Yeah.
human-wildlife conflict
Yeah.
where people see bears as a threat.
Right. It's a threat to their livestock, their crops.
So it's like a combination of factors then.
It is.
Habitat loss, poaching, human-wildlife conflict.
It all adds up.
It paints a pretty bleak picture.
It does.
But the essay also talks about conservation efforts.
Yes. Thankfully,
Okay, good.
there are some glimmers of hope.
So there are some signs of hope.
There are. I mean, over the past few decades, there's been this surge in conservation efforts
Okay.
driven by, I think, a growing awareness of what these bears are going through and, you know, people recognizing their ecological importance.
Right.
The essay highlights the role of international agreements like the European Union's Habitats Directive,
Okay.
which is specifically aimed at protecting bear habitat
Awesome.
and promoting ways for humans and bears to coexist.
Okay, cool. That sounds promising.
It is. It's a big step in the right direction.
So what are some of the strategies that people are using?
Well, there's a multi-pronged approach, I guess you could say. A
Sure.
big focus on habitat restoration,
Okay.
connectivity, anti-poaching measures, and then getting the community involved.
Okay, cool. So like with the habitat restoration and connectivity,
Yeah.
what'd that look like?
Well, the essay mentions things like creating wildlife corridors,
Okay.
which are basically like protected strips of land.
Oh, okay. That connect fragmented habitats.
Oh, that's cool.
So it allows the bears to move more freely,
Yeah.
like sign mates and all that good stuff.
So they're not just stuck in
Exactly.
these little islands.
And in some areas, they're even reintroducing bears
Wow.
to places where they had completely disappeared.
That's amazing, bringing them back to their historical range.
Yeah, it's a testament to how dedicated these conservationists are.
Yeah, that's incredible. But what about those human-wildlife conflicts?
Right? Those are tough.
They seem really tricky to solve.
They're complex and often like really emotionally charged.
I bet.
The essay really stresses the importance of educating people
Okay.
about bears,
Yeah.
promoting understanding and tolerance,
Okay.
but also like practical stuff.
Yeah.
Like encouraging farmers to use electric fences
Okay.
or livestock guardian dogs
Right.
to keep bears away from their property.
So finding ways for humans and bears to coexist.
Exactly, living in harmony.
That sounds like a really tall order.
But I'm glad that people are working on it.
Oh, yeah. Lots of dedicated people out there.
Are there any examples of this actually working?
There are actually, the essay highlights the Carpathian Mountains,
Okay.
where they've got this great combination of protected areas,
Uh-huh.
community outreach programs,
Hmm.
and they're promoting responsible tourism.
Ooh,
And the bear population there is thriving.
that's awesome.
It's a great example of what can happen
Yeah.
when people work together and really commit to this idea of coexistence.
That's really inspiring to hear.
It is.
It's a good reminder that there's always hope
Always.
even when things seem impossible.
You got to stay positive.
But I'm curious, how do researchers actually track these bears
Right.
and monitor their populations?
Yeah.
It seems like it would be really difficult given how elusive they are.
It's not easy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But technology has really helped.
Okay.
The essay talks about these satellite tracking collars
Oh, cool.
that researchers use to monitor their movements.
That they can see where they're going.
Exactly. They can see where they're going, what kind of habitat they're using.
Wow.
They can even identify like those critical corridors for movement.
So it's like having a window into their secret world.
It is. It's pretty amazing.
That's so cool. But I imagine there's still so much we don't know.
Oh, tons. We're always learning.
Right.
The essay emphasizes how important ongoing research is
Yeah.
to understand their behavior, their ecology, their genetics.
Right.
It's all crucial for making sure they're around for the long haul.
That makes sense. It's not just about the bears themselves.
No,
It's about understanding their role in the ecosystem.
exactly. They're what we call a keystone species,
Keystone species.
meaning their presence has this ripple effect on everything around them.
Wow.
So they're super important for things like seed dispersal,
Okay.
keeping prey populations in check,
Hmm.
even influencing like the structure of the forest itself.
Oh, wow.
So by protecting bears, we're protecting a whole bunch of other stuff too.
Their conservation has these far-reaching implications.
It does. It's all connected.
That's a really powerful thought. But beyond the ecological benefits,
Yeah,
the essay also talks about their cultural significance.
it does.
What does that mean?
Well, European brown bears have been a part of human culture for a long time.
I can imagine.
They pop up in folklore mythology, even national symbols across Europe.
Oh, cool.
The essay talks about how they represent strength, wilderness,
Makes sense.
and even this connection to our ancestral past.
Wow.
So the fact that they're in our stories, our traditions,
Yeah.
it shows this deep fascination and respect.
It's amazing how they've captured our imaginations for so long.
It is.
But with all the challenges they face,
Right.
what does the future hold for them?
That's the big question.
Is there reason to be optimistic?
I think so. The essay ends on a note of cautious optimism.
Okay.
The threats are real,
Yeah.
but there's this growing awareness of their plight
Mm-hmm.
and so many dedicated conservationists out there. And more local communities are getting involved.
Good.
So I think there's definitely hope for a brighter future.
That's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the key takeaways from all this? What do you hope our listeners walk away with?
Lots to think about.
I know we covered so much,
It did.
from their amazing adaptations to their
Yeah.
cultural significance, and then like all the complexities of how they interact with
Yeah.
humans.
It's complicated.
It really is.
Mhm.
So like when you think about it all,
Yeah.
what are like the most important things for our listeners to take away from this whole deep dive?
You know, I think if there's one big takeaway, it's that the European brown bear's story,
Yeah.
it's like this perfect example of how we interact with nature as a whole.
Oh, that's interesting.
It shows how much of an impact we have on wildlife,
Right.
how important conservation is, and also like
Yeah.
the potential for us to coexist
Mhm.
if we just prioritize understanding and respect.
That's a good point. It's a good reminder that like what we do matters
It does.
and that we have this responsibility to protect these creatures
Yeah,
and the places where they live.
absolutely.
But it's not just about protecting them because they're important for the ecosystem.
Right.
You mentioned their cultural significance earlier.
I did.
Like, why does that matter?
Well, I think it adds like this whole other dimension to the story.
Okay.
It reminds us that our connection to nature
Yeah.
goes way beyond just like the practical benefits.
Okay.
These bears are part of our stories, our myths, our art.
Mhm.
They represent this wildness that we've always tried to control.
Right.
But it still fascinates us.
Yeah.
So protecting them, it's also about protecting a part of ourselves.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
It's like recognizing that we're all connected.
we are.
And speaking of connections,
Yeah.
the essay also talked about how important it is
Yeah.
to have countries work.